We will begin this morning with Nadya Dutchin. Nadya, she, her, hers, is the executive director of the American Humanist Association. She leads the organization with more than 10 years of community engagement, strategic partnership, youth program development, multi-method fundraising, and change management experience. Nadya was the co-executive director of the Power Shift Network, a Washington, D.C. based climate justice organization where she led the communications and fundraising programs. Prior to that, she spent 7 years at Be the March Registry, where she first worked as a community engagement representative and then as the national account executive. While there, she cultivated strategic partnership, fundraise, manage national patient focus campaigns, and created the largest college recruitment program called Be the March on campus. Let's give an absolute raising hand to Nadya Dutchin. And
how's everyone doing today? Good. I want to start off by thanking everyone, particularly Mandisa, Bria, and Sakivu, our good sisters who have organized us here, all of the staff and volunteers who have worked the event and provided all of the sustenance and programming for us this weekend. I'm so grateful to be here, and I'm grateful to be among all of you in the room. Mandisa assigned the topic of my talk. I was voluntold. I'm not going to say that it was board pressure, but alas. And the question was, what is the future of humanism? Which is a really, really loaded question. It's not a simple answer, but we can get there together. So I'm glad I'm in the room with all of you because clearly you're committed to the future of humanism and secular organizing. So here we are together. I want to start by giving the definition of the word justice, because I love the fact that we hear so much about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but we don't hear justice. And I think that that is a really important piece that we can't continue to glaze over. Justice is the quality of being just, righteousness, equitableness, or moral rightness. And in the world, I believe that humanists and other secular folks, we have the moral high ground. We do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. We don't do it for favor. We don't do it for reward or in fear of punishment. And we have to figure that out for ourselves, what that means, what's right, what's wrong. And we have one another to help guide those decisions and questions. I think when we talk about the future of humanism, we have to think about the past of humanism. And so we're going to kind of take a ride back a bit. Humanists in particular have always been at the forefront of unpopular social change. Before there was Planned Parenthood, there were humanists advocating for reproductive access and reproductive justice. Marriage equality, ending child labor, yes, in the labor movements, in the union movements. Violence against women in marriage. One of the young sisters who was here yesterday mentioned, in the 70s, how did women report violence? They didn't, because it was legal. Marital rape was legal. Marital violence was legal. People just turned a blind eye. It didn't exist. We had no equity. We had no standing. We're going to go back a little further. And so when we think about the future of humanism, we have to harken back to the interesting set point of the Enlightenment. And this is where people in our current movement get stuck. Correct. That's the proper response. they get stuck in the Enlightenment in the 1600s, and we talk about reason and arts and culture and all of these very, very beautiful things that make life worth living. But that is not the beginning of humanism. It is in the minds of some people and in the minds of people in our current movement, and they're absolutely dead wrong. The Enlightenment happened because Black people came to Europe and enlightened them. So we have to go further back when we talk about humanism, and we have to go back to actual real humanism as it related to us as Black and brown people in our indigenous communities. We have held humanist practices since the inception of time. We have had community agreements. We have had transformational and restorative justice practices in our own communities, in Africa, in India, in China, in here, Turtle Island, where we are. These are things that we've always held. And it's interesting that in our current movement, when we talk about these things, they look at us like we have two heads. And they want to continue to other us by saying, an interesting comment was had at work in the last couple of weeks. Nadya, you and others are bringing something new to humanism. Whose humanism is the question? Yours or the one that we know? Because humanism is what kept us when we were stolen. It's what kept us when we had to forcibly migrate from certain places to other places. And this is not natural for us. So even though one of the difficult pieces to reckon with is that in all of that, religion also kept us. It kept us oppressed, but it also gave some sliver of hope for some folks. But having said that, through all of that, the overarching principle that kept us was humanism. And it was our connection to one another, our connection to the earth, our connection to our culture. We see it when we, think of, food is so evocative. And I think it's one of the most powerful humanist practices we can have is cooking and sharing meals and breaking bread with people. But if we think about it, jambalaya in New Orleans and red rice in South Carolina is jollof rice. It came with us. We called it something different, but it came with us. We joke and argue about Guyanese people saying chicken curry because that's what we do. But we are descendant from Indian people, as many West Indian people are, and so that is the nomenclature of food in India. So we bring our traditions with us, and our humanism has kept us, and it is more profound than the bloviating circle jerk that is all of these very enlightened conversation. I'm sorry, y'all. It is the most annoying thing. And again, it's beautiful. And I joke and laugh that when I interviewed for my job, it was critique. Mandisa was there. Where's Mandisa? She was there. It was critique, not in a negative way, in a nasty way, but there's so much opportunity to change, and there's so much opportunity to lift and appeal to people. And clearly it's interesting, when you're looking to diversify a movement, you bring in BIPOC folk, you bring in Black women, you bring us into, to fix the problem. Well, I can't do it by myself. I need all of you. We need each other. So in that, the language of humanism, I was actually arguing with the recruiter, you've got to learn the language of humanism. No, I don't. It's stale, it's boring, it's beautiful, but it's not the way that we speak. This is not resonating. It's not going to resonate with Black and brown people. It is most certainly not going to resonate with young people. And I come from youth movements. This is not the way that people speak. So we've got to change everything. And so that's what we're doing on our staff. And that is what we are going to be modeling in the movement. I have to say that one of the things that we have to keep in mind is we have to build our movement for the future that we want and deserve. And we can't do that rooted in fear. When most of my friends, I had a child very late. And so most of my friends had children in their early 20s and very early 30s. And there was a trend, particularly among brown people, to name their child very unisex, white sounding names. I never did it. I have two daughters, one who passed, but they both have names that identify who and what they are, because I was not going to shirk. And I did not want them to shirk from who they are and where the hell they came from. It is not acceptable. So here we are now in this, the irony is just joyful. Now here we are in a place where people, corporate HR departments are sifting through resumes for the ethnic names so that they can hire them. Ooh, guess who they're going to pick? My daughter, Safia, when the time comes for her. Hopefully she won't need to be picked, but nonetheless, so are we a foot away from white people naming their children Quantavious? What are we going to see? What are we going to see? I mean, honestly, but I built my life for her, and I built her for this. So I aspire to this for her and for all of our children so that we don't have to sit here and cower and shirk who we are and what we are. It's unacceptable. It is absolutely unacceptable. And my colleague Anna will tell you, our workplace, we don't code switch. We show up how we show up. We go, if we need to go in bonnets and sweatshirts and athleisure, we show up because our work comes from our heart and it comes from our brain and not from these Eurocentric BS professional standards. It serves nobody. Colonialism is what did that. And we've all been subjected to that. And I will say it and say it over again. I was just talking with Kevin about this. We've got to stop saying white supremacy because it isn't supreme. It is dominant. It is dominant and it has to stop. More importantly, we're not going to continue to fall into that. It's mediocrity. And it's been mediocrity, and we've never had the latitude of mediocrity. We have to be excellent as Black people, as brown people, as women, as femmes, as disabled people, as people who are other, people who are queer. We don't have the option of mediocrity. We must be excellent. We've heard it from the time we were children. You have to work twice as hard to get half as far. And it's unacceptable. We will not do it anymore. We're not cowering any longer. So we show up how we show up, and either you like it or you don't. And that is the message that I have for the movement. Either you like it or you don't. Either you're in here for this work or you're not. I will say it again, there are so many places in this movement you can organize. You don't have to be here, but we are here in solidarity with one another. And we're not going to sit here and move away from that. With people within the secular movement and outside of it, we have to bring on other partners who value the same thing that we do, because we're losing our rights wholesale in the world. So we're going to be partnering with people like religious minorities, probably like-minded Christians, and of course, the people that everyone calls nuns. I hate that word. It's because they're not none. They're just untethered. And why are we not grounding them here? Our movement is so beautiful, and it's rooted in love and respect, and honestly, some joy. We've seen it all weekend. We've had joy all weekend, sitting here with one another, laughing, being petty and inappropriate. It's been amazing. Being human, being our human, flawed, failed, joyful, fun selves together. But they need us. These young folks out in the world who are unconnected, disconnected. Looking for chosen family community. Again, moral high ground, wonderful, loving people, kind, thoughtful, generous. Many of us know struggle, and they don't have to struggle because we know what that's like. So they can come and be seated, but our movement isn't ready because it's just not ready. When I first started, I heard a lot of, I know you want people to feel welcome. No, I want them to be welcome. There's a difference. And I find it interesting that some of our European friends don't understand the difference. You got to clean your house before you have company. You got to make a meal before you have company. You got to change the sheets. You got to get things ready for people. They deserve that. We deserve that. And we've not been treated that way. So since we know better, we must do better. One of the interesting things that I would like to address to probably, and I say this to you to carry it back to your places, the people who are not in this room, they're going to need to deal with their fears and learn to be vulnerable. And we don't see that. It's a lot, again, bloviating, bravado, machismo, all those other interesting things to cover their vulnerability, their weak points, their mediocrity. Carry it back to them that they're going to have to learn to reckon with that themselves. Because this is how we build trust with one another, is by being vulnerable. We have to open ourselves, and we have to be willing to be judged. And for most of us, the greatest judge we have is ourselves. But it doesn't feel good when other people do that. But guess what? Some of their behavior is deserving of it, whether they like it or not. And they have to come to terms with that themselves. Trust respect and empathy, kindness and unselfishness. That's how we begin to gather ourselves as individuals. And it's really how we begin to sit in right relationship with one another. And that's not something that we talk about a lot, a right relationship. You can hearken back to Buddhism that talks about right whatevers through the Eightfold Path. But it's really, really important that we don't devalue relational organizing, relationships, vulnerability that it takes to build those relationships, opening ourselves to love, to respect, to kind of, there's so much beauty at the end of it, and we're so afraid. They're afraid. We're not afraid. We do this. We do this hard work together. We were saying last night that Black women, we always have hard conversations. Girl, let me holler at you real quick. And we'll pull somebody to the side and we'll have a conversation. Not everybody does that work. But we do it because we love each other, and it matters how you go out in the world because it reflects on me and it reflects on your people. And if you have a unique name like me, my whole family, everybody named Dutchin is related to me, no lie. So like I carry that with me. And it's a huge burden, but nonetheless, I carry it with joy because I love my people. I want to share, in closing, I want to share an interesting quote from a book called Elite Capture, How the Powerful Took Over Identity Politics and Everything Else by Olufemi Taiwo. The same tactics of deference that insulate us from criticism also insulate us from connection and transformation. They prevent us from engaging empathetically and authentically with the struggles of people, of other people. They're prerequisites of coalitional politics. We cannot move forward. This movement will die if we do not invigorate new life into it. And that starts with us. We have to find some joy and glom onto some sliver of hope that it can get better. And it's going to get better. Look at the room. And more of the rooms that we're in are beginning to look like this. We were at what they call the heads meeting in the spring. So the heads of all of the organizations, all the secular organizations, out of 17 organizations, the majority of them are led by women and brown people. We're going in the right direction. The future of humanism, in short. There's one more thing I wanted to just highlight. We keep talking about feminism, and I don't think y'all know it's not for us. You may have seen it in its original form and the forms that it takes now, but I want to introduce you to a term called womanism. It's a form of feminism that emphasizes women's natural contribution to society, the everyday experiences of Black women, Black and brown women, othered women, femmes. Think about this, about intersectionality, the actual real definition that we know from Kimberly Crenshaw, how we show up, all of the identities that we show up with every day. Again, don't put them down, don't hide them, don't insulate them, don't put them behind makeup and certain clothes and speech that is not natural. Be you and take all of your gifts with you as you go. In short, the future of humanism, it will be women-led and femme-led. It will be queer and BIPOC-led. It will be collaborative and generative. It will be holistic and patient, and it will be rooted in love. And y'all, we got to seize that joy each and every day. It's important that I know it's difficult because the world is a damn shit show, but everywhere that we can carve out joy with ourselves, with one another, if it's simply a meal, if it's a walk in the park, if it's putting your feet in the sand at the beach, sleep. Oh Lord, sleep is so good. Have a damn nap, y'all. Like, it's a part of our work. I prioritize rest as productivity at the AHA. It matters. So take care of yourselves, y'all. And please take care of one another as we think about the future of humanism. I need you all rested up because it's going to be a lot of work. We're going to start seeing more young people, more Black and brown people. 2 to 3 years of managing expectations here. So in 2 to 3 years, we're going to see something very different, but we're building something different. So keep an eye out. Follow us on the socials. They're kind of lit these days. We have a new communications director who's amazing and I adore, and you will start seeing things reflecting the real way that we feel about the country that we're in and the state of the world. Things are changing, y'all, and get on or get off. Oh, I don't know what you're saying. You want us to come say it? Call for voices. Oh yes. So y'all, okay. I was like, what you mean? This is why we have smart people on staff. So our conference, y'all, we've set our dates for the conference. Our annual conference will be the May 4th and 5th, I believe, next year in Denver. We have not gotten a theme yet, but please, y'all, if you've got things to say, we want to center people who are forgotten. And we want to really talk about the way forward. So if you've got proposals, please think about them and feel free to, you can find my email anywhere. Feel free to email it to me and we can talk. I would love to see more people who look like us, who sound like us, who think like us presenting at our conference. This year's conference was very reflective of that. I recommend that you go to YouTube and watch a good bit of it. It was great. And the white people were mad. It was great. They were like, what's happening to our AHA conference? It was great. So go to YouTube, go look at that. But please do consider submitting a proposal for next year. We look forward to having you. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. And be safe traveling home.
Thank you, Nadya. We'll take a few minutes for questions. Questions from both the in-person and online audiences. I know somebody got something to say. Come on, ask a question.
Nice, y'all don't be nice.
Yeah, this isn't exactly a question, but it's a comment that when you're talking about moving away from Eurocentric wars and that like the workplace and everything like that really resonated with me because I've been very interested in genealogy over the last 15, 20 years. And you know, as you start to look at people who are where you come from, and you start to see well, first off, that's a descendant of early slaves, part of my DNA. You know, it's very difficult to get that wall. But starting to realize that, you know, so many of cultural practices of people from not from Europe are denigrated. You know, everyone in the United States of America, except for the indigenous people, are people in diaspora.
Right.
We get only one group of people. Their cultural things are elevated,
Normative, right?
Denigrated. And so, as I'm being able to connect more and more to my ancestral roots, I'm a mixed race person with my father's side. You know, I want to try to dig into that and connect to that, and find out what were the cultural norms. Like I recently learned that I'm part Igbo.
Okay.
And so now I'm trying to learn everything I can about them and what their cultural practices were and how they dress. Connect to that and present that.
Yeah.
So that is my everyday.
And that's fantastic, and we need to do more of that. I mean, warm up your egusi soup in the in the microwave at work. Don't be ashamed of that. One of the things that I think is interesting that people don't really think about is white dominance hurts white people too. They are damaged and they don't even know it, and that's the painful piece. It's honestly it's difficult to when people when they're like white tears that happen that we collect in cups to drink for our satisfaction. But it's difficult to like connect on an empathetic level because like you bought into it because it benefited you. Yeah. And it's not their fault. I mean, to a certain point. I mean, if you've been fed a line that like this is who you are and this is what you're entitled to, and these people are other. But at some point you have to shake yourself out of it, and it's us doing the shaking at this point. But white people are most harmed by white dominance, white supremacy culture, by capitalism, this unfettered capitalism that we have. It's bullshit. This is not natural. There's always an element of capitalism in any economy, but it's bullshit. It's horrifying the way that we're subjected. We fight against our bodies every single day, doing things that are unnatural just to survive. It's not okay. So we need to reclaim our cultural norms again.
And especially people who were voluntary immigrants.
Yeah. Well,
who have a better connection to their past.
Yeah.
They know where they came from. You have an advantage. And
right.
You use that advantage to connect. We haven't already to connect.
Right.
And then maybe help those who have our cases more quick.
Yeah.
Voluntary.
Yeah, we can all work on that discovery together though. it's all of ours. It belongs to all of us. And we don't, genetic testing is not always that accurate. It's frequencies. But we can create our own. I mean, I think we did that in the West Indies. We have our own culture. It's very difficult for us. Very good. The food was wonderful, wasn't it?
Y'all better let me talk.
Please, Bria.
Y'all I better have a sidebar outside because I got something to say. My comment is I'm glad that you are in a position to be an agitator, because as far as the humanist organization is concerned, as far as I'm concerned, they can sit on a cactus and spin. Because their humanistic needs were overseas,
Right.
and refused to deal with the humanistic needs in America.
Yeah.
Especially when it came to the Black Lives Matter movement. And there was a woman who did her best to put a conference together to address Black Lives Matter, and there was no interest with the American Humanist Organization. And that's when I said, oh, so it's a conditional humanist. It depends on if you're living in a mud hut or if you're drinking nasty ass water. But if you're Black or if you're brown and you're an American, then that's not a priority. So,
Right.
and I was committed, you know, I got the tattoo and everything. But when I seen just how hypocritical and two-faced they were, I distanced myself. So I'm glad to see that you don't code switch. I'm glad to see that you're committed. We don't code switch either. I cuss like a motherfucker and I don't care.
We do.
Yeah.
We do.
So I'm glad to see you in a position, and I need to see what's in that book of yours, because you got powerful jewels sitting on
They
those
were
pages.
scribbles, but
So thank you. Thank you for your work.
No, thank you so much for that.
Go ahead.
In reference to white supremacy dominant culture, what is the word to use, or the referral?
You can call it whatever you'd like. I mean, but I don't find it supreme, so I'm not going to call it that. It's really just white dominance. It's Eurocentric dominance, as we were saying. It's the normative culture here in the U.S., and it's BS. It's meant to enslave us. It's meant to keep us in servitude and stop us from being creative and to imagine something different. We're so busy going to work and like grinding and getting in the car to go where we're going and go to the grocery. We're so busy we don't have time to think. So what we know is our own cultural normative practices is something that I think is shown itself to be superior through the ages, because here we are. We made it through all of that bullshit that was foisted on us, and we're here on the other end of it. But so I call it white dominance culture, not white supremacy culture, because it's not supreme.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question and a comment. Thank you very much for bringing up self-care. That is critical. So what is your self-care?
Oh, I said it. It's sleep. I've always been a napper. I nap. I will literally in the middle of the day. So I give 2 hours of flex time for our staff to do whatever they want. You shouldn't have to take PTO to go to the doctor or go out for a walk if you need some sun. So usually I take my 2 hours and I'm like, I'm gonna lay down on this couch and I'm gonna snooze. And I do, and I rest. I don't really have a whole lot of time for other things. I'm a single parent, and I'm trying to navigate those murky, very, very daunting waters at times by myself. So I don't really have a lot of other things that I get a chance to do. But I mean, I have friends, and I go to dinner and do normal things. I dance in my own house when I I don't know. I don't necessarily do a lot of other things, but I believe deeply in rest. And so
Absolutely.
I do that.
So the comment was back into the conversation about, genealogy and ancestry. And it's very clear that it was meant to leave us without those roots.
Absolutely.
And the good thing about the churches is they wanted to know who was marrying who got baptized. So when doing a lot of research, oh my goodness, the Catholic Church records were so helpful.
Right.
And I think that that's one thing that we can look at as a positive as we do our research.
Right.
And I traced through a lot of work and a lot of years, traced back to my indigenous ancestor where it said Maria Chichimeca. So they called her Maria, but named her band of the tribe. Mm-hmm. And I never felt so grounded in myself and that strength.
Right. Right.
So whoever can, again, look through the church records and whether we were property and they wanted to know who was marrying who and keep the census tracts and keep who was baptized and all of that. So find church records if you're able. That's a good place to look.
Yeah, exactly. And if you were from a colonized country like the rest, those of us that are West Indian, the British kept fantastic records. They really did. They kept fantastic records. I know which ships my family came over on, which is interesting. So, and that's the Indian family, not the African family. We just have oral tradition, which is, again, because it wasn't written down, it's not legitimate. It is legitimate. It's what kept us. All of those things that are handed down, the recipes, the stories that we hear from the grandparents and the great grandparents, if we were so fortunate to know them, that's how we know who we are. Look at our practices. And it's so funny how the commonalities we have bind us. It's really beautiful. I love meeting people and talking about like folklore. We were having a conversation about folklore the other day, and like ours in Guyana is very similar to some that come out of the like Hispaniola, the Dominican Republic and Haiti and New Orleans and Louisiana. So we have some of the same folklore. It's really interesting how things travel with us. This is the absolute last question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll be real quick. Thank you so much. I love listening to you and I've been loving the conference. We do lead in some devastating numbers, which are heart disease, diabetes, many kinds of cancers. And I really strongly encourage all my sisters, friends, and family to reject slave food and eat plants.
Thank you for that. And that is actually the default of the AHA for meetings is vegan, because we do have to be more mindful about how we feed our bodies and our brains. So you want a meat, you can get one, but that's not the default. We'll be sitting in vegan foods. So thank you for that, sis.